right, well, thank you very much. It's my honor to kick off this meeting. I've been looking forward to this for quite some time. I do have a nice long history with Blue. I first met many of the team members here back in 2001 when we were looking at replacing our Lotus Note system. We were quite advanced. We actually had an online tracking system, but we had to replace it due to a merger acquisition, as you all know how that works. And we were looking for a new solution, and we chose the PART solution at the time, which has then evolved to Blue. So that was 15 years ago, which makes me about 25. Yeah, so it's been a really nice relationship. I've just left industry within the last couple of months and joined a consulting firm, Navitas, who of course specializes in labeling. So what I'm going to talk to you about today is a theme for any of you who are members of Leaders in Labeling, which is a LinkedIn group. You'll have seen this theme throughout the past couple of years. And what Break Through the Wall really is as Danielle had mentioned, it's that opportunity that labeling has to really push the boundaries. It's not just the creation of artwork. It's not just the creation of regulatory text. It's not just the manufacturing piece, but labeling is quite frequently the group that pulls all of those organizations together. I can remember I was in Germany for about 6 months, and we were changing manufacturing plants. And after a while, we found out that we were the ones that were really driving this move of manufacturing plants when labeling was just a small component of it. But for us, we had to have the primary packaging had to be set. We had to know the exact dates when everything was moving. We were the ones that had the connections with the suppliers, and we're pulling all these different pieces together. And so although labeling sounds like just a small component of many of these pieces, it ends up to be one of the driving forces for success. So this is one of my favorite images because quite frequently that's what it feels like when we're doing labeling. We're flying at the speed of light and having all these different paths integrate. I like this image too. Who is involved with the creation of your label? If you were to sit down and make a list of all the people who are involved in the creation of your label, and then layer on all the people who are impacted by your label, your marketing, your sales, your manufacturing, your direct consumer relationship. We are the interface and the face of a company to our customers. Quality has to be there. Timeliness of information, especially within the pharmaceutical industry, is absolutely critical. From the minute in which a safety trigger comes through to the minute in which it hits the label and into the market, that time has to be condensed, as we are responsible to getting that safety information to our clients and patients as quickly as possible. When I first started, right out of college, I was in regulatory affairs, and I was working for an animal health company. And I walked into my manager's office, and we're still good friends, and every once in a while he likes to call me and ask me, what is it I do? Because I walked into his office and I said, I hate labeling. I hate it, I don't want to do it, I hate it. And he's like, well, why do you hate it? I'm like, there's always something wrong. And I actually quite passionately hated it and tried everything, but we were a really small organization and nobody else would do it. But, so I went and I learned the artwork stuff, and all of a sudden we were getting improvements. We were seeing that we were making an impact to the time to market, and we were seeing the improvement of quality throughout. So taking that I dislike this situation and moving from wrong to right was really a step forward. And slowly got me addicted to labeling. So yes, when he calls me up, I'm like, yes, I'm still in labeling. So working smarter, not harder. So again, this is an image you'd see on the Leaders in Labeling website. And Danielle mentioned the relay race. Believe it or not, I actually did run in high school. I was the number 2 runner. So anyone who did do relays knows that your slower runner runs in the number 2 position. But we were really quite good at it because of our handoffs. We practiced, we were from the same community, and we'd been doing it for years, and our handoffs were really nice and clean. What often you see in labeling is that, these really great people are working really, really hard. They're doing their step of the process as fast as they can and as well as they can. But quite frequently, they don't know what's on the other side of the wall. They don't know if there's 10 people there waiting for their job, or if there's a stack of 10 batons and people are just picking them up and running with them. And so within labeling, the concept of breaking through that wall is really understanding what your inputs and outputs are, understanding who is waiting for you, what your impact is for the organization, and making sure that your handoffs are as clear as possible. This is just a standard slide, quite frequently used with Navitas in the pharmaceutical industry. So with labeling, you're really kicking off with a trigger. Safety change, new products, regulatory change, technical change, or a non-regulatory or safety-related change, such as a brand change and such. And there's always these key steps that go through. So this will be in your deck afterwards. I'm not going to walk through it in any detail. But it is important to understand in your industries what these milestones are. So the red ones are regulatory point of interest, pieces in which an audit will happen and you'll have to provide that data. The blue are typical internal points of interest, so internal metrics that might be important, internal handoffs and such. The gray, well actually I think it looks blue on this slide too, but the gray ones are not quite required, but a trend watch, actually I think only 15 there, is that, when it's in your market. And then the other are other tracking points. They're important pieces of information that maybe aren't asked for on a regular basis at this point in time. So tracking your end-to-end labeling is really understanding what your internal milestones are. What are those KPIs, those key performance indicators that you're going to be tracking? What are your current timelines to meet those, and what are your targets? What are your interfaces with other systems? And I know that was mentioned earlier when we kicked off, but for labeling, those interfaces are absolutely critical. Again, it's not just how long does it take my artwork team to develop artwork? How long does it take my print manufacturer to print it? And how long does it take QC to QC it and the print process? It's that whole integrated system. So when we go and implement a system, you get your artwork done. Is that artwork then easily available to your incoming quality control group? Are they actually reviewing the incoming material on the artwork that you approved? Is the metadata available? So for those of you in the medical device industry, all the metadata that's associated with the UDI is also metadata that's associated with your artwork. And how are those two pieces communicating? For IDMP, it's the same thing. A lot of those pieces of information. And with consumer as well, you've got many different pieces of metadata that are associated with your artwork, and how can you really ease the burden of your colleagues and of yourself to help interlock that information. So an end-to-end system needs to address those 4 key elements. You've got your end-to-end tracking, and even something as simple as end-to-end. The definition of that day 0 often takes us, when we're consulting, days to agree upon. What is your day 0 and what are your milestones? Your content management. When I talk about content management, there's 2 different ways in which you can look at it. You can look at it as the individual structured content management, or you can look at your documents and your document relationships. And what is that visibility and transparency of content across your organization? Again, your training staff for your sales will want to know that labeling information as well, so they can also get their information updated. And how are those milestones communicated? When do you give them access and when not? Early access is not always a good thing. But you really do want transparency so that when you hit your milestones, that information is easily available. And then business integration. So again, access to the current labeling system across your organization, from operations, safety, commercial, regulatory, visibility and access to those documents, as I just mentioned, and then visibility and upcoming change control. So you really start to act like that advanced relay runner, that your preparation, that you know when to start, and that your hand's ready to receive that artwork so you can move forward with your business. Underlying these 3 categories is your deviation and tracking management. And within the pharmaceutical and medical device industry, this is becoming increasingly important. With our access to a global market, it's very important that a change isn't only made in the US, but that it's timely made in the US, Canada, across Europe, across Latin America, in your emerging markets. If it's a safety change, that you have that information available to the physicians so they can give the patients the most up-to-date information. And your ability to track deviations globally is also important. So for example, you might have a really good reason why you do not have a safety change in Japan. It maybe was rejected by their health authority and such, but you need to be able to confidently track and manage those deviations. So this is quite a long slide, but again, we're looking at the end-to-end labeling process. So in the pharmaceutical industry in the past 10 years, there's been a lot of focus on safety triggers all the way through to submission and approval. That's a really important first step. When you receive the safety information, you decide, yes, this is an event, and you decide you're going to move forward with that labeling in your pack. So all the way through to global submissions is a big piece, but it's also important to manage the back end. And again, that's really a cross-functional approach, and I list out here a couple of those themes. So we talked about the end-to-end process, really identifying your milestones, start and end points. The cross-functional labeling implementation team as well, who all is involved? Is legal, safety, and what are your team members? What is your governance and how is it set up? And is everyone really clear on what it is, their responsibility as part of this team? The opportunities of bundling is another hot topic these days. Within the pharmaceutical and medical device industry, there's really 3 primary opportunities for bundling. When you receive an event, so that would be coupling of different changes. So for example, if you have a safety event and you also have a technical change at the same time, and bundling those at the event status. The next stage is really, if you're in a regulated industry, before submissions. So you might have 3 or 4 different events that you submit to your health authorities at the same time. And the third and most frequent is your bundling at time of implementation. So as you get non-regulated changes as well as regulatory changes, that you bundle those at time of implementation. And those all reduce your frequency of change, but they also increase your complexity for tracking. So it's a really hot topic these days. Artwork and production scheduling, I'm sure you're all familiar, scheduling, that's my Canadian, scheduling. So artwork and production scheduling is really important. Again, that's that transparency in your process. Are you insourcing, are you outsourcing? Do you have the flexibility to make these major changes? It's maybe a smaller market, but if you're slowing down a submission in Europe, you might be slowing down an entire region that uses that European label as the reference label. So really having transparency and flexibility in your production. Understanding shared packs, multi-packs, and international packs. This has been a source of opportunity for me pretty much from the beginning. Trying to leverage those translations. When I was with Herxt or Intervet, we had a product that was sold in Germany. It was a corrugated carton, really nice box. It cost around $3.50, somewhere around there. And Holland loved this pack. They thought it was great. It was for a dairy market, so that durability was really, really useful. And they wanted to have this corrugated carton box. So we priced it out. The price for Holland for this box was $32. They had 1/10 of the market size of Germany, and therefore had a choice between 10 years worth of stock with no changes or a $32 price. And it really, or else they can combine with some other countries. And it really had a big impact on them. They thought it was a big sales advantage in their market. Chances that it was going to 10 times increase the sales, it would just get them at break even. But so then they looked at different multilingual packs, which is great, but then you're having to coordinate regulatory submissions and requirements across multiple industries. So it really, again, where transparency, that cost effectiveness really plays a role. And in labeling, we provide a lot of information to marketing and sales to help them make good decisions. Prioritization of resources and capacity planning, we talked about that, stock management, and then those handoffs between regulatory and supply chain. So this cross-functional governance, really knowing who is responsible for which piece, clear identification of roles and responsibilities, and then last but not least, a robust and comprehensive tracking system. So once you have your processes, once you have your roles and responsibilities, that's really when you can leverage a tool to help you pull together all that information. So within Navitas, we have one of the advantages. We're responsible for a group of industry forums called the Nets. And so this is some information pulled from the Label Net. And the trends today that we see are really looking at a single system or a single user interface fronting multiple systems. And I can argue both sides of this one depending on the situation. So some situations, like when you're doing XML editing, when you're doing artwork design, you need special tools and special systems to help pull those complex documents together. But if I'm in regulatory affairs in Bulgaria and I have one labeling change every 6 months, I really don't want to learn how to use 6 different systems. You know, one system interface or one system that can pull the information that I need is really useful. So we see both of those, a single system or else systems that plug well into other systems to really share information. That leads into the links of relevant product information. Again, it's not just the label, it's all that valuable metadata that is associated with the label. What countries is it going to? What are the barcodes? All that type of, you know, what is the shelf life? All that information that is important on that finished product pack. Traceability of versions and change control, and that part of a broader regulatory information management system. Modular structured content, so Utopia, you know, one piece of information just magically creates all this artwork. You know, whether it's pieces of information that have relationships or documents that have relationships is always something to consider. Future-proof. We heard this earlier too. You know, you design based on today's processes and today's needs, and tomorrow the FDA changes their mind altogether. Or the MHRA decides they want to do something different, or if you're in the pharmaceutical industry, you're bought. I mean, if you're not bought, you're divested, and then you get bought in a few weeks. But, you know, how all that works. The future of e-labeling, it changes constantly on which countries allow it and which don't. And then, again, as we started off with that end-to-end mindset across the organization. So don't just think about manufacturing, don't just think about regulatory. Take a step back and see who is really taking your information and using it, and how are they using it, and how can you provide them with better access to the timely information. So I'll end you with a vision for this. So I mentioned the relay race and the breaking through the wall. We'll start off with where you don't want to be. Monty Python is always a great place to go with. So I'll leave you with a vision of some labeling organizations out there. I won't name any, but this is a form of a relay race. So I'll set it up. Monty Python, of course, this is the Olympics from his perspective. It's not a relay race, rather it's a 100-meter dash for people with no sense of direction. But yes, this is they're getting ready here, so the various countries are lining up, all ready to run. Love the track suits. I think they're coming back into style. I'm pretty sure I saw them on the boardwalk last night. I'm not joking. So as they line up, you know, it looks perfect. The gun's about to go off. And go. So this is not our vision. Although it is reality, I'm afraid to say. Everybody's going their own path. If you look here at the next slide, we'll use the Olympic marathon because that's much more the way I ran the relays when I was younger. But you'll see here 2 primary groups. So there's the US and Jamaica. I can't remember what year this is because I forgot to check. Anybody know? So the US is in red. They're about the 2nd or 3rd line, and they are fabulous throughout this relay. You can see they're doing really well against the first few runners. Their handoffs are perfect. The second runner is in full stride. Handoff doesn't miss a beat. They're gaining on Jamaica, and if you watch at the end, they actually have about the same lead on Jamaica. They do another beautiful handoff. They're getting ready for their 3rd runner. Again, full speed ahead, and there they slowed down. Sorry, that was their last runner. So if they had been able to do that 3rd and the final handoff at the same speed, they might have possibly had a chance against Usain Bolt. My husband and I disagree on this completely. But without that handoff, that really timing and really leveraging your knowledge of what your teammates are doing to move you forward to the winning, speed just isn't enough. So That concludes my presentation. Thank you so much.